I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I plan fights. I plan to have a fight. I know we're going to have a fight when I get home. And I kind of figure out some questions I can ask her to get some information I'm going to need to win the fight. And I sneak up on her. And I went in this house this evening and I gave her a little kiss on the cheek and told her the dinner smelled good on the stove and said hello to the dog and the kids. And I turned and I said, Billy, you think I'm an alcoholic? And she said, I don't know whether you are or not. I said, well, that's damn funny. You've called me an alcoholic for years. And she said, yes, but I was wrong. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what your father or your mother thinks, your partners think, your friends think, your doctor thinks. It matters only what you think. If you don't think you have a problem with alcohol, you'll never do anything about it. Well, I'll tell you what, this conversation was not going the way I had planned it. And I was caught off guard, but I had a question. She seemed to know something, so I said, well, how would I find out if I was an alcoholic? The jaws of the Al-Anon trap closed just like that. She said, well, Jerry, one way you could determine it is if you quit drinking entirely. But I don't think you want to do that. I said, no, you're right. I don't want to do that. She said, the other way you can try it, there's a book called The Primer on Alcoholism that was written by a woman who was the first member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And she says in that book, if you have a question about whether you're an alcoholic or not, you should drink 2 drinks a day, every day for 6 months. No more, no less, but every day. And if you can do that and never exceed that amount, at the end of 6 months, you'll know you're not an alcoholic. I said, wait a minute, let me get this on my mind. You've been trying to get me to quit drinking for years. Do I understand you want me to commit to drink 6 more months? And she said, yes. And I realized I was dealing with a seriously deranged woman. It was, this conversation was going nowhere, and I got the hell away from it. I just said it's the dumbest test I ever heard and walked off, sat in my chair and drank for about 2 more weeks and thought about that damn test. And I was really worried. I just made senior partner in my law firm. I did not want them to know my wife was going to meetings in which they discussed whether or not I was an alcoholic. I didn't want them to have even a hint that they'd asked me a couple of questions about the way I drank, and I didn't need any more fuel for that fire. I could tell you that for damn sure. I was sure they're going to fire me. And I realized that somebody was going to have to make a sacrifice for this damn family. And I guess that's going to have to be me. I guess I'm just going to have to take the damn test. I didn't tell anybody I'm going to take the damn test. I'm not that stupid. She watched me drink all the time. She knew exactly what I drank. So what I planned to do was I just going to start taking the test. And she had noticed in a couple of months that I was doing that and doing just fine. And she'd get the hell out of that Al-Anon thing because she had to realize how a dangerous thing she was doing for the family. And then she'd quit and I could go back to my normal life. So I started the test. Well, I had to change the test a little. 2 drinks really didn't do anything for me. But I had a pretty big glass, and I figured 3 drinks. I'd have 2 martinis, which consisted of Beefeater's gin, maybe a little bit of vermouth. Not necessarily. Sometimes there was ice and sometimes there wasn't, but I had 2 big Beefeater gins. And then I would eat dinner. And then after dinner, I would have a brandy. in that same kind of glass with a little splash of soda for my digestion, which is what gentlemen did the world over after dinner. And she would not be able to say anything to me about drinking because this was reasonable. Unless she was completely a prohibitionist, this was a reasonable way to drink. I would not cause anybody any problems if I did this. So I started trying. And my recovery commenced on the first day I tried that. I didn't know I was recovering. I didn't know I was finding out I had a problem. But what I found out was I'd have about 2 of those drinks. And toward the end of the second one, I'd think, that's about all the martinis today. And then it would happen. It would happen. A thought would come in my head. And it would say, what are you doing? What are you doing? Are you over 21? Are you a man? Are you going to let a bunch of little old ladies in tennis shoes tell you how to drink whiskey? And the answer was hell no. And I'd drink the bottle. Or some days I'd come in and I'd walk up to the bar and I'd think, that's been a bad day today. Bad day today. Ain't going to be no damn test today. No test today, by God. Once in a while I could forget the damn thing. Kind of on purpose. Kind of push it out of my mind. But that sponsor of my wife's, she had her doing things that were just unconscionable. She had her, when she woke up in the morning, the instant she awakened, the moment, the second she awakened, she was supposed to say out loud and with some feeling, this is the day the Lord has made, I shall rejoice and be glad in it. Now, when you've had a quart of whiskey the night before, and you hear that, your head's throbbing, that boom, boom. Your tongue's got that, thick layer of something on there you could shave, One of your eyes has been propped open for several hours, and you have what I call dry sockets. And you're pretty sure you're not going to rejoice a hell of a lot that day. I'll just tell you that. And you think, why did I do that? Why did I drink that? I was going to just drink 3 drinks. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Good question. A guy that's had the kind of drive that I had, a guy that's had the kind of discipline that I had, that couldn't decide to drink 3 drinks a day and not drink anymore, that's a damn good question. And I gave that test a pretty fair shot. I tried it about 1.5 years, and I never passed it once. On December 31, 1972, I had only one objective for the day. I needed to be sober so that we could go out to dinner with a couple of friends and have dinner on New Year's Eve and come back in the house. We're coming back to my house. I know why we're coming to my house, because I've already got out one time that month, and it was hard to get me back in. And we're going to get me back in the house, and that they feel, I guess they take the car keys. I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to keep me in that house, let me bring in the new year. That's what I think they're figuring. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. It's important that I do it. I need to do this. And I started that morning. I had decided I'd have just a little drink, just to kind of loosen up the day and watch the football games. Just a little sip. And I was pacing myself throughout the day, watching it very carefully. And I was in my green chair, and I woke up. And I looked out the window, and it was dark, pitch dark outside. And I looked over, and my wife was sitting in her chair, and she was in her robe reading the books, a little book. They read lots of little books, I've noticed. They leave them around for you, but I never read them. And I said, Billy, shouldn't we be getting dressed to go to dinner? And she said, oh, Jerry, don't you know what time it is? It was a little after 10. I'd passed out at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I had no excuse. I wasn't mad at anybody. I wasn't celebrating anything. I had no reason in the world to drink the way I drank that day. I was sick of myself. I knew that she'd had to call those friends and tell them we couldn't go to dinner. And not only that, she had to call them and say, you can't come over here either. Probably she'd, being an Al-Anon like she was, she probably told them because Jerry's passed out in his chair. I don't know what she told them. But I was ashamed of myself. I was sick of myself. I was sick of what I was and what I wasn't. And I got up and I went to the bar and I mixed a big drink. I wanted oblivion and it knocked me out. God willing, that's the last drink I'll ever take. I got up on January the 1st, 1973, to the sorriest looking day I ever saw in my life. I sat on the edge of the bed that morning, hungover and sick, and Billy had already got up and gone to the kitchen or somewhere. And I sat there on the edge of the bed and I thought, what am I going to do this year? It's a new year. What are you going to do this year that's going to make your life any better? What are your options? What options do you have to deal with this problem? And I couldn't think of any option except one, and that was to stop drinking. So I decided I would stop drinking. First time I'd ever had that thought in the many, many years that I had drank. And I showered and I went in the kitchen and I told Billy that I was sorry that I'd messed up the night before. She was not impressed with my little apology. She didn't hardly respond to me at all. And I said, I have decided I'm going to try to quit drinking. And that got her attention. She wheeled around and she said, just a second. She ran over to the bookcase and she happened to have a copy of the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and the 24-hour day book. And she came running over to me with those books and she said, you may find these helpful. Would you like for me to call somebody from Alcoholics Anonymous? And I threw the books against the wall and said, hell no. Hell no. You keep them damned AAs and everybody else the hell away from me. Keep the kids away from me because this ain't going to be easy. This ain't going to be pretty. But by God, if anybody's going to do it, I'm going to do it. That's the way it's going to be. And she said something loving and Al-Anon like, you got it, and walked off. And I had it. I didn't know I had it, but I had it. And I don't know how it was when you quit drinking. If you're doing something bad, when you stop it, shouldn't it get better? Didn't happen to me. I began to shake inside and out. I got quick. I couldn't sleep. I was not in the right place. I was never in the right place. If I was laying down, I ought to be standing up. If I'm standing up, I ought to be outside. If I'm outside, I ought to be inside, sitting down. I'm just moving and grooving around, and I'm shaking, and I'm looking. And we go to the neighbors to watch the football game, and I don't see much of it, but I've looked all over the screen. And it doesn't get any better right away, I'll tell you that for damn sure. At the end of the second day, I caught her out of the kitchen, and I knew she'd left them damn books around there somewhere. So I decided I better go read them books and see what those AA and AA people do, whatever the hell they are. So I went in there and I didn't have time. I'm sorry, I didn't have time to read the big book. Just didn't have time to do that. But I picked up that little 24-hour day book and I opened it. With that keen alcoholic mind, I noticed there was a date on the top of every page. I turned to January 2nd and it said, alcohol's ruined your life. And I said, yes, sir. Yes. And it went on to tell me that this year we're going to give our drinking problem to God. I can't tell you how disappointed I was in that. How are you going to give something to somebody you can't find? I've been looking for God ever since I was a little old bitty kid. I wanted to find God. I wanted to see somebody walk on a little water or burning bush. I wanted something big to happen to convince me that this was not some kind of con. I was always a skeptic, always cynical. I was born that way. And it never happened. I demanded God show himself to me, and he just didn't do it. And there I was in deep, deep trouble. And the book telling me I got to give my drinking problem to God is the only way I'm going to get out of this deal. And I don't know why I did what I did. But I threw that book out in the middle of the table and sat there in that chair and said, God, if you're there, I'm going to give you this drinking problem. And if you take it, I may do some more business with you. Maybe the best prayer I ever said. It was dead honest. I expressed myself exactly the way I felt. And I needed to drink just as bad after I said it as I did before. But I got through that day. And the next morning I got up and I knew something that I hadn't ever known before. I knew that my self-sufficiency wasn't going to handle this deal. I was going to have some help if I was going to quit this thing. It had me. If I didn't get some help that day, I was going to drink before the night was over. I needed some help with skin on it. I didn't need some spirit somewhere. I wanted some people. And the only people I knew was Alcoholics Anonymous. My wife had, I knew about her. I couldn't call her bunch though. She'd been there talking so damn long about me being a drunk that I couldn't. She'd poisoned the well there. I couldn't go there. So I called the central office. Found it in the phone book. It sounded important, central office. And I got the most unsympathetic woman on the telephone I've ever heard in my life. I said, I'm having a little problem stopping drinking. And she said, how long have you been sober? Well, this is my second day. You need to go to an AA meeting. I said, okay, fine. But you gotta understand that I'm a pretty big time lawyer and I can't just go anywhere. I gotta go to a secret place. She said, where do you want to go? What kind of group do you want to go to? And I said, well, I'd like to go to a group that's, near a country club, that has college graduates. And she said, we ain't got none of them. And she said, and I said, I can't go to a meeting every night. I can't. I'm a busy lawyer too. And she said, well, what are you going to do at night? What have you been doing at night? I said, well, I've been drinking at night. And she said, well, you're going to stop that so you're going to have some free time, ain't you? So I said, give me a little quiet group. I want a quiet little group. It's got to be secret. So she gave me the town and country group.